The Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania, good friend Joe Sestak. Hey, Congressman, good morning. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill, for having me.
So the president, after much deliberation, 10 different meetings with all of his advisors in the Situation Room there, decided 30,000 more troops would do the job in Afghanistan. Is that a decision that you support?
It is, as long as the objective remains one issue and one issue only, and that's the eradication of the safe haven of al-Qaeda in Pakistan. Of his three objectives, the partnership with Pakistan,
right,
which is close to a failed state, has nuclear weapons, radical Taliban protecting the al-Qaeda, that's the sole reason to be in Afghanistan. Second, I wrote a letter to the president on Friday. He did not provide what he had said last March would be provided for Afghanistan, and that's an exit strategy, which are benchmarks by which we can measure progress or failure and trigger, if successful, the exit, or if unsuccessful, by measurements, which we've never had in Iraq, an alternative exit strategy. And that's the sole remaining issue that he has to provide.
Well, let me ask you, first of all, Congressman, how can we, it seems to me there's a disconnect. How can we bring security to Pakistan and get the al-Qaeda out of Pakistan by sending troops to Afghanistan? We're talking two totally different countries here, right? I mean...
Yes, we are. And it is the perfect question. There is no border between Afghanistan and Pakistan recognized by the tribal chiefs, the warlords, and in particular the Taliban. There are approximately 25,000 Taliban in Pakistan, 20,000 in Afghanistan. If we want Pakistan to eradicate that al-Qaeda safe haven with our covert assistance, we have to be on the other side of the border. So those Taliban that they are now turning from South Waziristan to North Waziristan, that they don't flow across the border where Pakistan cannot go. So in short, if you want that al-Qaeda safe haven eradicated, the al-Qaeda, and there's only a few hundred troops there, there are only a few hundred terrorists there of the al-Qaeda with their leadership. If you want a partnership, Pakistan will pursue that outpost. Then we have to be in Afghanistan to close down the running across the border.
And how long do you think this is going to take, Congressman?
I said last March, after a closed hearing with the administration, which they said 3 to 5 years. I've repeated that time and again, with one exception, and I come back to this time and again. There must be a very firm set of benchmarks by which we can measure our progress. This cannot be an open-ended commitment. If the cost becomes more than the benefit after a year or two, and you're measuring it, then you need to trigger an alternative exit, which is a distant containment strategy, which Vice President Biden was arguing somewhat for. We rely upon eavesdropping and surgical strikes. That is a less and probably less beneficial, more costly way to approach it, I believe. But I am supportive of a limited window to see if we can partner with Afghanistan for them to salvage their state by eradicating those in Pakistan and help our national security by eradicating the leadership of al-Qaeda. As we don't try to rebuild Afghanistan, it's too costly. When I was on the ground in Afghanistan, head of the Navy's anti-terrorism unit early in the war, we had an opportunity to fix the illiteracy rate of women, for example, that would have done more for the global war of terror than anything a military force can do. But now we just need to leave behind conditions in Afghanistan, forget that corrupt, inept government, even the warlords or the tribal chiefs or the 70% of the Taliban that are in Afghanistan and are there for a wage, not ideology. 70% of the 20,000 can be bought off. That's why, if done well with benchmarks, there's a window of opportunity to achieve the al-Qaeda eradication. But I stress this time and again, we have to measure our progress, and if it isn't, the cost become too much, then we exit. I believe the cost will be much greater if we wait 3 or 5 years, depart, and then they have time to plan against us.
All right, now look, a couple of questions for you on that point. You said you were there early on in the war, which you were, and we've been there, as you know, 8.5 years now, right? What makes you think? What makes you think that we can succeed in this small window or this 2-year window or whatever we're talking about, when we haven't been able to succeed in 8 years? And hasn't the president? The second question is, hasn't the president given you what you want when he says July 2011? We're going to start bringing our troops out. That's your benchmark, isn't it? That's your window.
There's two items there that you asked. On the first one, I was on the ground and we were winning. The Al-Qaeda was on the run. We began having civil affairs forces, special operations forces that not just provided us with security, but begin the types of nation building of a society that would be inhospitable because the rule to Al-Qaeda coming back because of the rule of law, education, justice. But then we went to that tragic misadventure in Iraq. Those special forces, those civil affairs forces all departed. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said 2 years ago, Afghanistan has spiraled downward. As the head of the CIA, General Hayden, say, Al-Qaeda now has a safe haven in Pakistan. In short, we took all our resources and our attention and put them in Iraq. And we had general after general asked to have those forces come back so the rule of law and the other elements of international national power could work. And General, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, in Iraq we do what we must. In Afghanistan we do what we can. There's a small window of opportunity to do it right this time, and I think the president is right to try it because the cost of more later. Second, to your second question, which was
the 2011, July 2011.
Part of that question.
The July 2011, whether that's a realistic deadline.
What the president did is, and this is where he gave a beginning of a withdrawal in July of 11, because he said that would speak to the Afghanistan government that our commitment is not open-ended. As you saw on TV on Sunday yesterday, some said that will be a few troops. That won't be many troops. Here's what I believe. It isn't that date that's important. It's whether the president gave us an exit strategy based upon not whether Afghanistan is picking up its partner, its share of the duty, because I think they're so inept, so corrupt, we should never place our interest in their hands, because our interest is not, and I don't mean to be cruel with this, Afghanistan. Our interest is the Al-Qaeda that brought us into Afghanistan and have moved to Pakistan. I believe, as the president promised, and he gave us a draft in September, but not the completed set of benchmarks for an exit once we can measure is Al-Qaeda eradicated in Pakistan. Then we know how we're progressing towards an end date for withdrawal. That, to me, is what is most important.
Congressman Joe Sestak from Pennsylvania, our guest here on the Bill Press Show. Now, Congressman, I got one more question for you, and we'll let you go. And this is related, but not right on Afghanistan. The New York Times reporting Friday that on the effort in Pakistan, it's really being conducted by the CIA. They're the ones who are flying the drones. They're the ones who are pulling the triggers. And these are CIA agents who sit out in Langley, Virginia, with these remote controls and are basically the assassins. Is this the proper role for the CIA to be, conducting military operations in another country?
Under the title of there's Title 10, Title 14, by which our forces and our CIA are permitted to do things, and they are permitted to do that. Actually, when I was in Afghanistan and visited Pakistan early in the war, they were doing that and have been doing that for these years. They work very closely with intelligence and are permitted to do that. Those reports and what they do come in on the closed channels, both to the intelligence committees in Congress and to the President of the United States. My belief, and I have met, and by the way, my belief is, and I've met twice with former President Musharraf of Pakistan, is that we should almost transfer the ability to do that to the Pakistani army, because every time a missile goes awry, we are the ones who bear the brunt of it.
Yeah.
But no, that is it. One last thing, if I might say, I can't tell you, Bill, how much I respect those who differ on this issue from me. This was one that I have learned over 31 years in the military, and when I worked for President Clinton and in the White House and saw these decisions of leading men and women, placing men and women to war, that there are one lesson I learned about the military is the limit of what military power can do. So I can't tell you how much I respect those who have come to a different position based on merit, not political calculation, but merit. But I honestly believe in my experience in the White House and on that ground that there is a limited window where it will cost less if we're able to do it well. But we must be able to measure it so we can expect ourselves, not like we did in Vietnam, and just stayed the course no matter what. We must have those benchmarks, which is why I vote the president.
Congressman Joe Sestak, as always, great to have you with us this morning, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, Joe Sestak from Pennsylvania, Democrat.